Hello, so I'm Dan, the editor of War Games Illustrated magazine, and this is Steve Tibble, who is the author of this book, Assassins and Templars. Not only is he the author of this book, he's also the author of this book and this book as well. In fact, you could say Steve's a bit of a Templars expert.
Well, I do love them. You can't beat a good Templar, can you?
No, you can't,
obviously.
no. And he's also a regular contributor to War Games Illustrated magazine as well. We were just looking back, weren't we, through the vault to see. There's quite a few that over the years that you've written. Usually, again, on your chief subject of Templars and the Crusades and that kind of thing. So this time we're throwing into the mix not just the Templars but the Assassins as well. Can you tell us a bit about that slight shift you've made, or from Templars to Assassins, or bringing Assassins into your writing?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's I think the Assassins are wonderful because, and to be pedantic, it's actually very important to be pedantic. This is Assassin with an uppercase A. It's not just me being a grammar meister. We've come to think of the word assassin as just being murderers, but in a way, it's a huge branding success story, because the Assassins as a group with an uppercase A were a tiny cult, this kind of Shiite Muslim equivalent to the Templars, guys who are terribly focused, defending their religion, prepared to defend it with blood, their own blood, and as many other people as possible, So they do fit in quite nicely with the Templars as a juxtaposition, because I think because we're European, most war gamers are Europeans, you tend to think of all of these things from a Eurocentric perspective, but it's important to remember that most of the people fighting in the Crusades, even in Templar armies, most of them were probably Arabs or Armenians or whatever, Christian Arabs. So there's a whole wealth of different cultures and communities out there that really should be much bigger part of the wargaming we do.
Yeah. I mean, due to the Assassins' tactics, it's a challenge bringing them into a sort of tabletop battle game, which, because it wasn't your problem, that's Mike Peters, who's written the Assassins and Templars rules. But I mean, they did operate in clandestine fashion behind the scenes a lot of the time, didn't they?
They did, very much so. Mike has done a fantastic job, and you've done a brilliant job at bringing that all to life. But it is intrinsic to their brand, really, that you don't know what an assassin looks like. If you said to me, well, what are my assassins? What colours do I need to paint up an assassin figure? It's like, well, just look around you. You want somebody that blends in. The last thing you want, if you're an assassin, is to stick out. They're the kind of Jason Bournes of the medieval world. They need to be like a chameleon, and they very often inveigled their way into the confidence of the people around them. So you would be killed by the person you least expect, because he would be your great mate who was your spy or one of your bodyguards or what have you. So they could look like anything. And yeah, they did also, like the Templars, operate in surprisingly small groups. So at any given point, the kind of the fighting end of the Assassins was, I don't know, less than 100 people. I've never heard of more than 13 of their elite squad, who are called Fideis. If you talk about Assassins, you're really talking about the Fideis. The guys with the daggers literally at the sharp end of the Assassins. I think 13 was tops. Once when they did a hit on, tried to kill Saladin, 13 guys went in, nobody came out, but that's a different story. You have to read the book. But and the same with the Templars. There are very few brother knights. If you look at the Templar army, they're full of sergeants, mercenaries, Arab auxiliaries, and so on. The actual brother knights are a relatively tiny group of people, so they do kind of fit better into a skirmish game. And I think that's where you and Mike have done a fabulous job. Is you've taken something that's intrinsically very difficult to put on the war games table, but you've found some very realistic but playable scenarios that you can just sort of roll it out.
Yeah. Scenarios are obviously a key part of the game as well, but they're also, reading your book from a war gamer's perspective, they're a part of the book as well, because although it does proceed chronologically, it's a book that's full of stories and tales, and you kind of go from one to the other, and as a war gamer you're thinking, oh, this would make for a great scenario, this would make for a great scenario. And obviously you found that as you were doing the research, did you? All of these different stories that you're uncovering.
Yeah, traditionally, everybody thinks of the Assassins as being very secretive, and the same with the Templars. And actually, they both were in their own funny sort of way. They were both almost cults. But the way you see the Assassins most visibly is when they leap into action. So there can be years when they're just sitting in a castle somewhere. You've no idea what's going on. Any kind of theological or political changes could be happening. You very rarely see it, and then they put their head above the parapet. Literally in some cases, and then suddenly all hell breaks loose, and the key political figures in the region get knifed and what have you. So they have great stories, and they do leap out at you, and that is the reason why they lend themselves so well to these kind of wargaming scenarios, because they're small in number, so you can realistically do a huge, a quite big Assassin's hit with a handful of figures. And you can play realistic scenarios with them. So, yeah. I think also it's just a very nice way to, I love history and I love wargaming. So, what's a girl going to do? This is just a fabulous way of putting the two together.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. And of course, as part of the subtitle of the book, A Battle in Myth and Blood, the myth aspect of both the Assassins and the Templars has kind of overtaken the history in many ways, hasn't it? Of course, we've got things like Assassin's Creed, the video game, which is absolutely massive.
Yep.
But this is kind of the true story of the history behind that game. Was it difficult sorting the myth from the reality?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. Yeah, it is. Assassin's Creed is a fabulous game, and it is wonderful, and literally hundreds of millions of people play it. It's like a significant part of the world population has played it and have become aware of, a mythological version of the Assassins and the Templars through it, and that's brilliant. I think the wonderful thing about Assassin's Creed, though, is that it does have a sense of authenticity. So it's not a history lecture. It's a fantasy game, and they never pretend to be history. But they have created, particularly in the classic 2007 version, a very authentic view of the medieval Middle East and the look and feel of how Templars and Assassins, ran into each other. And I was just fascinated with the idea of taking the real backstory for the game and bringing that to life, because the Templars and the Assassins in the game are kind of larger than life, legendary characters, but in real life the guys were so crazy. They almost deserve legendary status for what they actually did rather than stuff that we make up, and I just like it it's a nice balance, really. Yeah, the guys deserve to be remembered for what they did as well as for what they do in a game.
Well, the book does a great job of that, bringing both the Assassins and the Templars back to life. I'm nearly at the end of it, as you can see by my bookmark. I'm nearly there.
You keep nodding off though, don't you?
I just can't wait to find out who wins.
Spoiler, no one does.
Oh, really?
No one gets out alive.
Right, well, I'll leave it there then. But thanks very much, Steve. It's great. We love having you involved in War Games Illustrated. We love you writing for the magazine, and it's great that you've been involved in the Assassins and Templars game that we've got going on. But of course, if you want to find more about the history, this is the book that you need. It's Assassins and Templars, and it's by Steve Tibble. Thanks very much, Steve.
No, thank you, Dan.